Our panel is going to talk about is multimodal mobility. And there obviously is tremendous opportunity and change going on in every city around the world. And we all know that the current mobility solutions are not sufficient as more and more people move into cities, as pollution and congestion become a significant part of every city and every landscape in the world. And more importantly, it's going to get more and more congested based upon the percentages of people that are moving into cities and moving into urban environments. And I think what's really fascinating of the panel we have, when Deloitte did a study around future mobility, we identified a kind of 5 key areas of value creation and value capture. And those were, and it really is represented here on this panel between companies that provide the hardware, whether it's the transit systems for rail, buses, vehicles, fleet operators. We have fleet operators that provide different forms of fleets, and more fleets are beginning to emerge in cities. We have data aggregators that are beginning to collect data to provide that multimodal transportation that is seamless for a customer. And we have those companies that are being able to provide the infrastructure to pull it all together. And I know Joe hired and some of the things that Ford is doing around your transportation mobility cloud will enable that. So I think we're not going to do the video, but what the video was about was the future and how this multimodal world will evolve. So maybe without the video, maybe Laurent, you could give us your perspective around what that multimodal future is going to look like, and more importantly, what role your company plays in that.
Yeah, as you mentioned, at Keolis, we consider that in the future, especially in the large cities, it will be a combination of what we call heavy modes, so more subways, more trams, more trains, maybe some very large bus systems, because we cannot avoid them. It's absolutely necessary to carry what we call the mass transit. And this would be done in conjunction with the new mobility services, i.e. shared vehicles. So we call it CASE, connected, autonomous, at the end of the story, shared and electrical. So this kind of dynamically routed fleet of collective vehicles, so to put still a few people in each vehicle, in combination with the station, with the stops, will help people move smoothly in the cities. So for example, here we partner with Zeira as a company to develop and deploy these kind of services where the bus systems are not efficient enough. So to avoid empty buses, to avoid the long time of waiting, and replace the regular bus line in suburbs, for example, by a more ride-sharing system, network, which will be in combination with the heavy modes to drop you at the station and then combine as a multimodal journey your A to B trip with different mode of transportation.
Yeah, that was excellent. And Joe Heyer, and I know you were responsible for business development at Ford. And Ford, obviously, great manufacturer of automobiles. But at CES, you announced your focus around smart cities and the transportation operating cloud, which I think is an important infrastructure enabler to bring what Laurent said to life and allow all the different modes of transportation to operate seamlessly. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I think, so it's kind of a unique time for Ford, right? We made all these cars. It's been great for humankind. And, now our streets are just too crowded, right? And as a company, we got to sort of reflect on that and be part of the solution. And so, when Laurent was asking the question, and I'm thinking about who's the winners in this, I mean, we hope, to be honest, that people are the winners, that we free up our cities. Cities are easier to move around in. Everywhere I travel a lot, Jeff, I know you travel a lot. It's a disaster everywhere, right? And as you pointed out, so we started something called the Mobility Cloud, and part of that is to get different modes of transportation to talk to each other, to have that seamlessness. And sharing of data and the transparency around it. And there's obviously, we're going to be very careful about privacy rights and things like that, but that is a key enabler to actually solving the problems. And I one other point I touched on that Laurent mentioned, mass transit's great, and I think we do need to encourage shared mobility and mass transit, but the other thing we really need to be careful about and make sure of, at the end of the day, it's got to be a good experience for the customer. And, look, I say Uber's got to be the most successful mobility company today, and that's what they did. It's a better experience. It's a better experience than what existed out there. And so we could do all that we want to encourage behaviors, and we should come up with, new and better forms of transportation. But we also have to remember, at the end of the day, if there's not a customer who likes it, it's not going to get adopted.
No, very, very good point. And I'd like to hear from, maybe Jeff, you can start since Joe kind of teed you up. Uber has provided a great customer experience. What's the next act? And how do you not only continue to provide the great customer experience, but do it in a way that doesn't increase the congestion in cities? Because as long as Laurent, said it very well, as long as we have single occupancy vehicles, we're not going to solve the congestion problem.
Thanks. I think the way you frame the question is an interesting one. What's the next act? And as I look back over the last 6-7 years of Uber, there's been a number of acts relative to the products that you've rolled out. It started with just a black car service. Then Uber X came along, then Uber Pool, and it went to a big focus on shared mobility. Focusing on autonomous vehicles is clearly a big part of what's happening in the overall transportation ecosystem. But the big next act that I think the entire company is focused on is similar to what Joe was talking about, this multimodality and building interfaces between not only our platform, but public transportation system, other companies' transportation systems, so that ultimately that Uber is able to, working with other partners, deliver an exceptional product experience. So I can wake up, I can take the first leg of my journey in an Uber Pool, get to my destination in the afternoon, maybe I need to take a bike, and I take it there. And then I have a meeting down in South Bay, so I take a self-driving car to the transit hub, and I'm automatically then getting on the train that takes me down to South Bay for a larger arterial journey. And then when I arrive, because of the data connectivity, I've got an Uber X that's waiting for me to take me to the meeting. And so a huge focus of the company right now is building towards this multimodality, working in conjunction with other transportation partners, public and private, to really offer a suite of services to customers.
Great. So, Alexis, you operate in a company that really provides if you will, the infrastructure. Correct. And the vehicles for mass transportation. What are you seeing evolving around that, and what are cities asking for? Because today, some of the mass transportation is not the most efficient, and it's highly subsidized by cities. So what are you doing to reduce that burden?
You're right, and I fully agree with what Laurent has said. What I see in all the cities is a real need for efficient mass transportation, high-capacity mass transportation, coupled with new mobility services, so all the new mobility services. So in Alstom, we are specialists in mass mobility, mass railway transportation, so we are doing the rolling stock, the infrastructure, and the digital part, that is to say the control centers, so we are specialists in control centers for traffic management, and we are equipping these mass transit systems. So this is going to be the backbone of all the cities, for sure, but it is not enough. It is clearly not enough. So we are doing this. For instance, we have been doing the tramway in Jerusalem, which is in operation, so I was very pleased to have the experience yesterday again in Jerusalem. And now we need to couple this with new mobility modes. And in regards to this, I really agree with you. We need a mobility cloud platform that links all the various mobility modes, the tramway, the metro, the railway, and the new ones, the on-demand, the ride-hailing, so all these new modes, because there is a strong need that it is coordinated. If not, the experience to go from point A to point B will not be efficient, and people will still continue to use their car. So this is absolutely critical, and with our experience in control centers in the mobility environment, we are expanding it And we have invested in a new product called Mastria, which is the control center of the whole city. And we are doing very efficient pilots in Europe, in various places, and very soon in US. And so I fully agree with your principle. It is already in reality, and most of the city will come to this principle of having a multimodal orchestrator or traffic management. It is really a need to have an efficient experience to go from point A to point B, clearly.
No, very, very good. And Laurent or Joe, do you want to maybe talk a little bit about, that aggregation of the data that allows intermodal or multimodal capabilities and seamless interface for the consumer so that they can plan their journeys, pay for their journeys, and do it in a way that brings all of these modes together?
Yeah, I think we need to think about it at three different levels. The first level is the city, where the city needs to plan, needs to subsidize, need to make sure that they bring the right quality of service to the citizens. And I fully agree that the mass transit has to improve the quality of service. And the coverage are also to be increased through these new mobility services so that everybody can have a mobility solution, close to their home or close to their activity. It has also to be affordable from a social standpoint, because of course we also need people having low wages and unemployed people to be able to move. We cannot tell them you don't have the money so you cannot move. That's not possible, of course, in cities. So that's the first level. The second one, of course, is for the passenger, for the citizens. So it's about simplifying their life through the multimodal journey. So it's about trip planner, it's about multimodal trip planner, it's about payment, it's about ticketing, it's about booking the seat or the vehicle, etc. Here we partner with Moveit. We are also a shareholder to Moveit as a basis to get all the information and bring this the right way to the passengers on a multimodal solution. And then the third thing is either for the city or for the operator on behalf of the city will be, as you mentioned, to have this kind of operating system to manage the mobility in the city in the future and to react on a real time on expected or unexpected even in the city. Let's say, if you have a city with a mass transit on one side and of course a number, maybe thousands, tens of thousands of vehicles moving people around, how many vehicles do we need Monday morning? How many can we remove to recharge them at 10 a.m.? How many should we re-inject in the system if we speak about autonomous vehicle in the future at 12? And of course we also need to react very soon and very rapidly to an unexpected event. What if a station is closing? What if a line of metro, of subway is having an issue? So basically this will be, in my view, the next step in building the mobility of the future on a multimodal basis.
Joe, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think that's spot on. I mean, we've seen it. It sounds like a lot of us work on similar problems. And, we're living in a world now where data is much more prevalent. There's much more ability to ingest that data in a coherent fashion. And we're finding, the transportation systems of today were built up over time. They don't necessarily all make sense. And there's a lot of ways, without massive infrastructure projects, that we can make it more efficient. So we have bus lines that run, these giant buses that no one's on. And you don't need such a big bus. And you could use smaller modes of transportation. And so there's just a lot of ways to optimize it. And part of the problem is just understanding what the problem is. And so I think we're starting to get to that realization. Cities are working on it. We're working with them. It sounds like some of you guys are as well. And then, that's just the beginning, right? And then how do you optimize for that? How do you sensitize it? How do you do scenario planning? And so, it's an exciting time. And I think, like I said, without, there's going to be some need for infrastructure for sure. We all know budgets are often constrained. But there's a lot of things you could do that just make it more efficient, actually, more cost effective.
So and I completely agree with you, and it's going to take significant collaboration with cities, significant collaboration with many players, and lots of innovation. And I think, virtually, as I was walking through, and the week that I've been spent in Israel, the amount of innovation here all of it could be applied tomorrow to help solve the solution. The difficulty is going to be integrating it. Ohad, Avis budget, is your business is evolving pretty rapidly, and you've had new business models with Zipcar that evolved. What are some of the innovations and business models that you're testing out today, and in what cities?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it ties to the exact discussion that's been happening here, which is around utilization and really around throughput, right? If you add utilization, throughput, and an experiential point of view, you can, once you optimize that, you can get to that threshold level that we're talking about to delight people and moving through a city. We are playing today in kind of two sides of that coin. One on the pure mobility side, with Zipcar, for example, whether it's Flex in a floating fleet in London, or our traditional Zipcar partnering with cities, partnering with public transport to ensure the right vehicles are at the endpoints to help with that last mile. We are also innovating on things like the Zipcar commuter program that provides cars for commuters on an A to B, but leaves them for other citizens or other employees on off times. So let's say nights and weekends, and so it becomes a shared asset. So again, increased utilization, but not changing necessarily the way that people want to behave or are used to behaving. The other place that we're attempting to innovate in the space is on the fleet side, which is saying, can we provide vehicles to multiple modalities? Other customers, ones that are not Avis, Budget, Zipcar, Majority, or any other brands, but rather ones that are through other brands and other modalities, and in that case, increase the utilization of that vehicle, reduce congestion, take off parking spaces. All in all, we're doing that by having made a commitment to connect our entire fleet by 2020. This allows us to use it a lot more flexibly rather than in rigid use cases. We've already have a connected city in Kansas City where all 5,000 vehicles have been connected. That allows us to experiment both on that back end and front end on new business models and new consumer experiences.
So, as you think about all the things your individual companies are trying to do, and the new business models and the new technologies and that you're trying to create, as you see all the different startups in Israel, what are, I guess, some of the technologies that will enable you to accomplish what your companies are trying to do? And maybe if you can talk a little bit about what you've seen, what kind of excited you over the past day or so as you talk to many different companies. And I don't know, I'll just open it up to whoever wants to start.
As far as Keolis is concerned, in fact, we consider 5 strategic initiatives. The first one is about autonomous vehicles. It's more for the medium to long-term future. We consider we need to get there right now to learn from a technical, from a user experience standpoint, from a regulatory standpoint, and start putting this in operation in real life. So here we do it more with a French startup called Navia, which is providing shuttles, 15-seat vehicles. So we have now something like 10 experimentation in 7 countries. We carried something like 70,000 people with these autonomous shuttles, which are level 5. So no steering wheel, no pedals. And so this is for us a very key element, and I see a lot, of course, here about this, how do we get to the autonomy in terms of vehicles, and of course OEMs will have a major role here, I guess. The second one is more about the new services we can build with these kind of vehicles, but also sharing the vehicles. So I mentioned Zeira. For us, clearly, we need to add to our existing, mass transit system these new capabilities, especially to cover areas where we know that the regular bus system, the regular bus route is not efficient enough. Okay. The third one, as I mentioned, and we all mentioned it, is about a step further about the fleet management system. How do we operate in multimodality on real time, reacting to events, this large system combining very, I would say, guided, heavy modes together with a large fleet of vehicles. The fourth one is about mobility as a service. You mentioned it. It's about, bringing the right tool set to the passenger, to simplify the journey from a digital standpoint, from a physical standpoint. So it's from trip planner to payment. And this is very important. I also have to add that it's not only A to B. We see in the northern part of Europe people trying to come back to a kind of a multimodal variable subscription, which would encompass not only the public transit, but also the car rental, and maybe the airline services, and maybe the bikes, etc., so that you can provide for a household a solution which will, if I may say, prevent them or avoid them buying a car. Still using cars, but may not be buying them, because we all know that if at one point in time we don't have a solution, then we will buy a car, and then of course we will use it because we have bought it. So basically, we need to have an answer for any situation. That's the fourth one. And the fifth one, coming back to the data, is understanding the demand. We only can do that if we understand where the people are moving in the city, where they want to move, and that's basically what we call building the order matrix on a very detailed basis, so that we can answer the needs of the people in a city.
Excellent.
Maybe.
Laurent?
Yeah, so it was very interesting for me. So as you have understood, our core business is the mass transportation, and we want to enhance the quality of service first of this mass transportation. So in regards to this, there is innovation here that can be applied and used in our systems to further improve the quality of service. This is the first aspect. The second one, you're right, new mobilities. So you are investing in Navia. So my company Alstom, we are doing the same in EasyMile, which is another autonomous shuttle. So for sure, this will be the future of mobility. And third point is the multimodal management. For the multimodal management, the demand and the new fleet management system is key. And here there is very promising startups. So for me, a very, very rich day. And what I can also conclude is that we are coming from different industries, but now it's a very exciting time because we are all converging towards the same goal, the mobility in the city, and we are all very active. And what we need now is also the regulation part, all the transport authorities, all the cities to change because a lot of possibilities are now coming, and it's a big change also for them. So to come back to your question before, how to subsidize, for sure smarter solutions have a better return of investment than big investment, for sure, this kind of new mobility services. But it's a change. But I'm sure we will all work together in the near future for the mobility of the city. So very good panel.
Great.
Yeah, so I would just add, in addition to all the new mobility initiatives we've seen, obviously a huge focus for us is autonomous vehicles. There's tremendous amount of talent and initiatives going on there, whether it be in sensors or machine learning or cybersecurity, which are all sort of tied together in some ways. We bought a company here a couple of years ago called Sipes. It's been unbelievable, just phenomenal talent. And, I think what really puts Israel in the sweet spot here is it's such a complex, evolving world. And one of the great skill sets you need is problem solving. And I would say, Israeli engineers are the top of the heap as far as that goes. Creativity and being able to think through problems and not just, sort of the direct line, but seeing other ways to take things. And so, I think that's probably what drove a lot of us here to this conference. It's the innovation is just incredible.
I would just echo those sentiments. I've been really blown away over the last few days. I've had the good fortune of meeting with a couple dozen startups and to a T, remarkable teams covering a wide range of topics, all touching on transportation. Just to walk over to the hall and see the magnitude and capability that is gathering just in this small ecosystems, unlike anything I've ever seen. I'm based in Silicon Valley, so I see a lot of startups, and I've never seen this concentration in one place of so many capable and talented startups focused on one type of problem. It's really remarkable.
So what do you see the difference between Silicon Valley and what you see in Tel Aviv?
I think that's an unfair generalization. I think just to have the magnitude of startups, like if you think of entrepreneurs per capita and number of startups that are solving really hard technical challenges in such a small geographic density, it's unusual. And it's a special place. I couldn't be happier to be here. It's been a remarkable couple days.
So, Ohad?
Yeah, if I may, we listed every category, so I won't go into that again. I wanted to double click on one thing Laurent said before we get kicked off, which I think is super important for this panel, which is it's not about solving the A to B and maximizing that one trip in the city unless we can take out a car, remove ownership, take out a bay and use it in a different way. We're not going to make effective change. So I thought that was a really significant point. And then in terms of one thing I thought I would see, so I'll leave it out as a challenge, maybe because next year, is my guess, is it would be here, is a lot more thinking on moving of packages and goods within the same system and not just people.
So we just really touched the surface of this amazing area of opportunity. And Joe, I think you said it really, really well, because I often thought of this as who are the winners and losers going to be, but it really is about winners. I think, tremendous opportunity for companies, citizens, cities, and ultimately consumers. So thank you all.
Thanks, Joe.